Welcome back to Things You Don't Know. This episode explores some of the weird things happening in our solar system on the moon and on Earth. Dr. Deneen and Chandler Foster will try and keep me from getting too speculative, right, Dr. Deneen?
Yes, we will, Dr. Weaver. The things we are investigating make it hard to avoid speculation, especially given the potential impact on all of humanity. But we will stay grounded, and any speculations will be noted as speculative. I know, Chandler, that you have some real interest in these topics.
For sure, but we will avoid putting on tin-foil hats tonight. Dr. Weaver, let's quit with the tease and tell our listeners what to look for in this episode.
Well, thanks, Chandler. Today we're talking about a real object, not an invented one, not a rumor, not a creepy pasta from the internet. No, 3iAtlas, the third confirmed interstellar object ever observed passing through our solar system. It was first reported by the NASA-funded Atlas survey in Chile on July the 1st, 2025. The name really does matter. The 3 means it's the third known interstellar object. The I means interstellar, and Atlas is a survey team that found it and also has a reference to Sagittarius. NASA says it came in on a hyperbolic path, meaning it is not gravitationally bound to the sun and that it approached from the general direction of Sagittarius. NASA also says it posed no threat to Earth, staying roughly 1.8 AU, about 170 million miles away at its closest approach. Now, we will also talk about the wow message, the mid-air explosions that have been happening, and touch on the moon humming business.
Absolutely, Dr. Weaver. Now, Dr. Deneen, let me hand this to you. Why does that matter so much that people hear this interstellar object and think, well, that sounds cool, but why does astronomy react like it has found buried treasure?
Because, in a sense, Chandler, it has. Most of what we study close up in astronomy belongs to our own solar family. Even when something is ancient, it is usually ancient in a very local way. But 3i Atlas is different. It is a traveler from somewhere else, a body formed around another star in another planetary system under different conditions, and then thrown into the dark between the stars. So when it passes through here, scientists are not just looking at a comet, they are looking at a sample from another system. ESA says its observed behavior identifies it as a comet, an icy body releasing dust and gas, but what makes it precious is that this comet was born elsewhere.
This comet was born elsewhere. How well put. I'm wondering, and Chandler, that kind of opens a psychological door too. People do not merely hear foreign object, they hear visitor, they hear messenger, they hear something crossing boundaries. That is where science and human imagination start walking side by side.
Well, now, Dr. Weaver, let's go straight to one of the strangest things, because this right here is the part that hooks people fast. The apparent tail leading the object, that's really the detail that makes people sit up and take notice.
Yeah. And it's worth slowing down for. In ordinary popular language, people said 3i Atlas looked like it had a tail in front of it, or a tail leading it, as it were, which sounds backwards. But the more careful scientific picture is that observers saw a sun facing plume or jet material emerging from the illuminated side, while a more conventional dust trail, very narrow, not normal at all, extended in the opposite direction. Hubble, the space telescope kind of thing, Hubble imagery showed dust coming off the sunlit side, and the 1AC later described a narrow jet of material emerging from the sun illuminated region, clearly distinct from the dust trail, which extended in the opposite direction. That is not the usual picture people carry around in their heads when they imagine a comet. What do you think about that, Dr. Deneen?
Well, Dr. Weaver, let me build on that a little. This is one of those cases where the phrase tail leading it is a little dramatic, but not wholly crazy as a first impression. The object really did present a sunward feature that drew attention, and later work described a wobbling jet, the first such periodic jet detected in an interstellar comet, which helped estimate a rotation period of roughly 14 to 17 hours. That's strange and unique, but does not necessarily make it unnatural. But it does make it unusually vivid and structurally interesting. What do you think, Chandler?
Well, Dr. Deneen, I think the responsible version is not just, oh, a comet broke all the rules. It's more like a real interstellar comet displayed a sunward jet or an anti-tail-like feature dramatic enough that ordinary people described it as a leading tail.
That's exactly right.
Yes, right. And Chandler, this is where I want to be less dismissive than many scientists sometimes sound in public. And there are many reasons for that, I'm sure. When ordinary people say, that doesn't look right, they are not always being foolish. Sometimes they are noticing something real only in kind of rough language, perhaps. Their vocabulary may be imprecise, but their instinct that this object is odd is not wrong.
Oh, okay. Now, Dr. Weaver, stay with that thought right there and take us into the chemistry. Because the chemistry, well, this is where 3iAtlas starts sounding even stranger.
Yeah, you're right, Chandler. One of the most intriguing facts about 3iAtlas is its chemical inventory. Now, scientists are not cutting it open and inspecting its center. No, can't do that. But they are reading what is coming off it. The gas and dust in the comet and jets, which acts like a window into the object's composition. NASA's Open Science Summary says that combined observations found unusual production rates of water, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide compared with those of more familiar comets. Now, ALMA, which is that's a massive international astronomical observatory located in the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, comprising 66 high precision antennas that study the universe in millimeter and submillimeter. Yes, millimeter and submillimeter wavelengths. ALMA then reported that 3iAtlas was extremely rich in methanol relative to hydrogen cyanide, putting it among the most methanol rich comets ever studied. Yeah.
And Dr. Weaver, that matters because chemistry in this case is biography. A comet's chemistry tells a story about where it formed, what temperatures it experienced, what kind of disk or cloud it condensed out of, and perhaps what kind of violent history it endured before being thrown free.
So when people say, we found unusual material inside it, the careful version of that is, The material coming off 3iAtlas suggests an unusual interior history.
Exactly. And that is a beautifully cautious way to put it.
I, I agree. Chandler, let me hand this to you. Why do you think the public reacts so strongly to phrases like methanol rich, carbon dioxide dominated, or unusual isotopes?
Well, Dr. Deneen, because those phrases sound like clues. They sound like the object is carrying information, not necessarily a message in words, but information about another place. And the more unfamiliar the chemistry sounds, then the more people start wondering whether they're looking at something nearly natural or something selected, shaped, or altered for a purpose.
That is well said. Here we cross into the zone where science ends and speculation begins. A natural explanation remains the mainstream one. But the object invites speculation because it combines several traits at once: interstellar origin, unusual chemistry, a striking sunward feature, a wobbling jet, and a trajectory from the general direction of Sagittarius. That cluster of facts is exactly the kind of thing that triggers the human urge to kind of narrate and speculate.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Deneen, let me bring in the age question because that's another part that people hear and they immediately go, wait, how old?
Yes, that's very important. A recent report based on James Webb observations and still described as under peer review suggests that 3iAtlas may be astonishingly old, perhaps on the order of 10 to 12 billion years.
Whoa, that's a long time.
Very long
It
time.
sure is. The case rests on unusual isotopic clues, including deuterium enrichment and a low carbon 13 to carbon 12 ratio, which some researchers interpret as signs of formation in a very cold, chemically primitive environment in the early galaxy. If that estimate holds, I'm going to say this very slowly because it's important, then this object may not be simply from another star system. It may be a relic from a very early epoch of the Milky Way.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Weaver, I want to hear your reaction to that because this is where science, well, it starts to sound almost theological.
Yeah, it really does. Because once you say an object might be billions upon billions of years old, older than most worlds we casually think about, it stops feeling like mere debris. It starts feeling like survival, a shard, a witness, a survivor from systems that may not even exist anymore. And that gives speculative thinking a lot of emotional fuel, right, Dr. Deneen?
Very reasonably so. Even if it is just a comet, it may be a comet older than civilizations, older than Earth as a habitable world, perhaps even older than much of the galactic structure we take for granted. I'm in awe here.
All right, now let's lean into the speculative side a little bit more openly now. Now, Dr. Weaver, one of the speculations that's circulating is the idea that 3iAtlas could have some kind of quantum entanglement or deeper connections with civilizations of Sagittarius. And that's not a mainstream astronomy claim, but how would you frame it in a way that's imaginative rather than sneering? And this is really interesting because we're getting into quantum entanglement, one of my favorite things that I'm kind of fascinated with here.
I would say this. There is no established evidence that 3i Atlas is in communication with entangled with, or controlled by any civilization in Sagittarius. That being said, the factual point is simply that NASA traces its incoming direction to be that part of the sky. But speculation often begins where geometry and symbolism meet. Sagittarius has long been imagined as a direction rich in cosmic significance because it points toward the denser regions of our galaxy. So, some imaginative thinkers ask, what if 3iAtlas is not merely passing through from that direction, but in some deeper sense still linked to where it came from, not linked by radio, not linked by ordinary mechanics, but by some form of information correlation that we do not yet understand.
And Dr. Weaver, if I can sharpen that, the phrase quantum entanglement here is really doing symbolic work. It is a way of saying, could this object be part of a larger system, not fully severed from its origin? Science has not shown that, but as a speculative framework, it has emotional and philosophical power.
Because then 3iAtlas becomes more than just matter. It becomes a relationship.
Yes, 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 Chandler, right. A relationship, or perhaps a probe, or perhaps a memory object. Not proven, but it really is quite imaginable.
Well, to be clear, the speculation isn't that there is some kind of communication linked by quantum entanglement, but that 3iAtlas might be gathering information, which is transmitted back to its origins.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Almost sounds like science fiction, huh?
It does. Very interesting.
And that raises a lot of questions. And as speculative as it may be, these should not be summarily dismissed because, as we know from science history, there was a time when even the idea of cells in the body was just sneered at and dismissed. They thought there was a homunculus in your brain somewhere, a little man. God.
Sometimes I think there is the way things are today, but that's another issue. Okay, Chandler, ask me the harder question.
Well, all right, Dr. Deneen, if you want it, you've got it. Do any real public speculations go beyond its weird into maybe technological?
Yes, Chandler, some do. Public discussion around 3iAtlas has included speculation about non gravitational acceleration, jets acting as thrusters, the possible release of mini probes, and even rough alignments with older signal mysteries such as the wow signal, even though these remain conjectural and are not evidence of artificial origin. A University of Washington analysis of the online discourse summarized several of these themes, including claims about jets that could be interpreted as maneuvering and speculation about a sky alignment with the wow signal region.
The wow signal. Now, just to clarify, the wow signal was a strong 72-second narrowband radio signal detected on August 15th, 1977, by Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope. It originated from the constellation Sagittarius and exhibited characteristics suggesting an extraterrestrial origin. More than just a little bit interesting. And now, Dr. Deneen, why do those ideas catch on so well?
Because once an object is both foreign and odd, every irregularity gets reread as intention. A jet becomes a thruster, a geometry change becomes a maneuver, a rough sky alignment becomes a breadcrumb.
And here again, I do not want to mock that impulse. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can go too far, yes. But it is rooted in a serious question. How would we know the difference between unusual natural behavior and low-level technology? If a truly artificial interstellar object passed through our system and behaved subtly, would we immediately recognize it? Or would we file it under peculiar comment because that is the nearest available category?
Well, now that's a great handoff, Dr. Weaver, into some additional speculation here. I'll offer one, and you two let me know if it's at least interesting or what. So, what if 3i Atlas is not a craft in the ordinary sense at all, but an information bearing relic? Something like a naturally occurring object intentionally selected because comets survive or immense times. In other words, not manufactured from scratch, but chosen and used.
Chandler, that's a very clever speculation. So you see it more like a bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean than a ship.
Y-
Yeah.
y- yeah, I can see that. A civilization might not need to build a gleaming metal probe if it could instead modify, mark, load, or exploit a durable, icy, rocky body already built by nature. The advantage would be camouflage. It would look natural because it largely is natural.
And that would help explain why the chemistry is both comet like and still off.
Yes, as speculation, yeah, one could imagine an object that is fundamentally natural but altered, tagged, or used. Another interesting speculation involves the moon humming, a phenomena recorded by Apollo astronauts. Often, it's just simply dismissed and attributed to geologic or electrical impulses. Yeah. It's also been suggested that the moon's hum changed after 3iAtlas entered our solar system. Think about that one. This has not been rigorously studied, to my knowledge, and has been largely ignored, unfortunately, by mainstream science.
Let me add another speculative layer. What if 3iAtlas is not a message to us at all? What if it is simply a carrier of prebiotic material, a seeding body, one among countless others, throwing organic rich matter across stellar systems over immense time?
So, not aliens writing us a note, more like a galaxy engaging in a rough, blind distribution.
Or a type of directed distribution if one wants the bolder version.
Yeah, that is worth entertaining, truly. Methanol, cyanides, carbon dioxide, water chemistry. These are all the sorts of molecules that make people immediately think of prebiotic pathways. It's not proof of life, not proof of design, but enough to inspire the idea that interstellar bodies might be part of how raw ingredients or even more organized chemistry move between systems.
Now, let's handle what some people have called the Ohio question, not as something to sneer at, but as something to examine. The speculation is that the air explosions in Ohio might be related to fragments from 3i Atlas's tail.
Yeah, the real event is very straightforward. On March 17th, 2026, just recently here, a bright meteor crossed the Cleveland area sky, produced a loud boom, and NASA's meteoroid specialist described it as a body roughly 6 feet across, around 7 tons, first seen over Lake Erie, traveling tens of thousands of miles per hour before fragmenting. Now, is there established evidence tying that meteor to 3iAtlas? No, no, none that I found at least. However, NASA's published 3iAtlas overview also says that the comet stayed far from Earth and posed no threat. Doesn't mean that fragments didn't come off from its tail or from other things.
No, Dr. Weaver, in a speculative frame, one could still ask a softer question. Could the passage of an interstellar comet somehow correlate with a broader debris environment, detached dust, or older fragment streams that only later intersect with other bodies? That is a much looser question than saying the Ohio meteor definitely came from 3iAtlas.
Yeah, you're right, of course. That is a more measured speculative question. It is one thing to assert a direct causal link. It is another to wonder whether interstellar visitors shed material in ways we poorly understand, or whether their passage alerts us to a larger swarm structure we are only partly seeing. That is speculative, but it is at least shaped like an inquiry rather than a proclamation.
So the refined version is not Ohio proves that the comet is dangerous, but maybe objects like 3i Atlas belong to larger debris histories than a single nucleus alone reveals.
Nicely put.
Dr. Weaver, I want one more speculative possibility from you before we close here.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. Here's one that I find rather eerie. Suppose 3i Atlas is neither an active machine nor a random rock, but a passive beacon, an object whose significance appears only under certain conditions, like when it's heated by a star, spun at a certain rate, releasing certain gases, and presenting a certain geometry. In that view, the plume, the chemistry, the changing tail structure, even the timing of activity would not be the message itself. They would be the conditions under which the message becomes legible, not to us perhaps, but to anyone advanced enough to read it.
That is a wonderful speculative image. It's not a radio broadcast, but a triggered inscription.
Like a record that only plays when worn by sunlight and the right system.
Yeah, that's a strange way to say that, but you're right, exactly.
Just to be a contrarian, let me offer a darker one. If the age estimates are anywhere near correct, perhaps 3i Atlas comes from a system that's gone, shattered, stripped, or simply long dead. In that case, the object may be less like a messenger from a living civilization and more like an orphan remnant from one that vanished before Earth had complex life.
Oh, now that one is haunting.
And powerful because it reminds us that not every relic carries a sender still waiting on the other end.
Oh, so let me try the summary and you two tell me if I'm being fair here. 3i Atlas is real. Its name is meaningful. Its orbit shows that it came from beyond our solar system. It displayed a striking sunward feature alongside a more conventional tail. It has a chemistry that looks unusual compared to that of many familiar comets. It may be extremely ancient, and because of all of that, people have built speculations around it about technology, messages, entanglement, prebiotic seeding, and even possible fragment connections to strange sky events. Some of those speculations are weak, some are imaginative, some are philosophically interesting, but none of them are yet settled science.
I think that is fair.
Yeah, it is very fair.
Well, thank you. Then maybe that's the right tone for 3iAtlas. Not gullibility, not contempt, but disciplined wonder.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, Chandler. Disciplined wonder. Not every anomaly is a spaceship, but not every anomaly should be talked down as though curiosity were embarrassing. 3iAtlas is already extraordinary by any reasonable standard. And if it turns out to be nothing more than an ancient interstellar comet, then nothing more is still one of the most remarkable phrases in astronomy.
You're right, Dr. Weaver, because just a comet can still mean older than nations, born around another star, chemically unfamiliar, and passing through our sky only once.
And leaving us with a question that humans always come back to. When something crosses the darkness to reach us, are we looking at debris or a sign?
Thanks for listening to Things You Don't Know.
Come back next time.
And tell us what you think. Relic, messenger, natural wanderer, or something stranger? For Dr. Deneen and Dr. Weaver, I'll say, see you next time.